especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teal, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm your host, Marcia Teal, and I'm so happy that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program. If you're listening here in South Florida, because we are live from Boca Raton, Florida, or if you're joining us on your laptop, smartphone, or computer on the website, caregiversolutions.info, I'm glad that you are here. I'm very excited about our guest today because she has a wealth of information. But I have a couple questions for you before I introduce you to her. So if you're a caregiver and you're caring for someone with memory loss, do you ever wonder sometimes what the difference is between a memory care assisted living, a nursing home? What's the difference? Which one is the right one? Do you ever need assistance with, questions that maybe come up that no one else can answer and you need a resource? Or do you fear the day when you place a loved one into a memory care community because you don't know what to expect? Well, my guest today has all of those answers and more. So I'm going to introduce her to you right away because we have a lot to talk about. Her name is Marianne Fisher, and she is the Director of Marketing at the Arden Courts of Palm Harbor. And Palm Harbor is in Florida on the West Coast. So she's going to be joining us via telephone. But if you're watching us a live stream, you'll see her picture on the screen. So let's go straight to Marianne. Marianne, are you there?
I am, Marcia.
Hi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
I'm so glad that you're here. I see your picture on the screen, and you look very good and happy today. And I'm so glad you could be here because we have so much to share with caregivers. So, Marianne, the first thing I want to ask you is, how long have you been in the healthcare field where you have been helping patients and residents and caregivers and also being around people with dementia? About how long has that been?
I've actually been with our company for 25 years, and I've been helping in this capacity for 9.
So that's a long time, and I'm sure that in all those years, you have a lot of stories and you have a lot of success, things that have happened, and very good success stories also. And also, you can share your expertise because, as you know and I know, being a caregiver is one of the hardest things a person ever has to do. And it's not easy because they're not trained. Now, you have all of your training, your education, and your experience to share today. And that's why I'm so excited to have you with us today. So,
I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. So let's get right to the first question, because I know a lot of people say this. I've heard it many, many times. I'm sure you have too. And although the caregiving task is very hard at home, a lot of caregivers will say, I think I'm just going to keep my loved one at home for as long as I can until I have to put him or her in a nursing home. Do you hear that too, Marianne?
I do often. We sometimes call it the nursing home promise.
Okay. Well, could you explain that and tell me what you would say to a caregiver that would say that?
I often meet people, honestly, that have been maybe married 50 years. It's very heartwarming, and they want to take care of their loved one or their parent. And I simply just try and explain our community or any kind of assisted living compared to home. We have so many different resources here, from entertainment, children's groups, nursing staff. We have a whole team, and by having a whole team to give the care, it's so much easier than the person at home. And they actually become, I know myself, when my mother had to go in regular assisted living and I started visiting the community, I was enjoying being a daughter again. That meant so much to me to not have to worry about every detail any longer.
Right. What was it that you said the nursing home promise? What exactly is that?
It's an old-fashioned saying. We've heard it at support group for years, but it's simply where you may tell your spouse or you may tell your parent, I promise I'm never going to put you in a nursing home. And they feel like they've made that promise, or they have, and now they're forced, especially with dementia, to have to make a different decision.
Right, but it's not necessarily true that a person with dementia has to go straight into a nursing home, is it?
Oh, no, not at all. I think people don't understand the difference between nursing homes and assisted livings these days. We are able to do so much in assisted livings, from helping someone with incontinency to showering to nurses giving their medication. There's so many things that we can do, and I don't think they understand the difference between assisted livings. They've been only around really about maybe 20 years or so.
Right. Well, you're right. A lot of people think, gee, my loved one can't go to the bathroom, on their own, and they have to wear adult briefs, and that probably excludes them from going to, an assisted living for memory care. But that's not true in and of itself. And so there are a lot of differences that people need to be aware of so that they can make the right choice. And like you mentioned, the assisted livings have a greater capability than what most people think, especially ones that, like Arden Courts, many of them are limited nursing licenses, which can even go beyond regular scope of assisted living. So some of the things that the caregivers can do is what caregivers would do at home, correct?
Exactly. Some of the same things. It's, of course, making it a very social environment. We want to, with our programming department, reach the person in many capacities, from education and the children coming in. Of course, we can help them, like I said, to the restroom and things. Really, there isn't just about anything that we can't do. We cook their meals for them, help them at their point of care, however much care they need, because we do want them to be as independent as possible.
Right. And so a lot of caregivers understand that in a memory care assisted living like Arden Courts, that the meals are prepared and you help the residents with their activity of daily living, which is like bathing, dressing, toileting, things like that. And they'll say, well, I can do that at home. I can do the same thing at home. So what would be some benefits of having your loved one go into a memory care assisted living rather than stay at home too long? What could they expect to receive as a benefit from doing that?
More stimulation is actually going to make the resident seem in memory care more alert, and they will be more alert. They'll be more stimulated. They'll be more happy. When the family members visit, by them getting to be the family member again, they're engaged in conversations that they weren't doing before. Even oftentimes someone will move in and say, oh, my mother hasn't played the piano in 15 years. But my programming director will sit with that person and spend time with he or she, and they're playing the piano again. There's no boundaries, because we accept the person where they are, and we really don't put limits on what they were in the past.
Right. So stimulation is good. So you have a couple kinds of stimulation. You have the social part. Let's talk a little bit about that, because as people progress in their dementia, I know that a lot of caregivers have said that their social interactions with their friends and with their loved ones' friends dwindles for a lot of reasons. They don't know what to do, or they're embarrassed, or they just, don't want to be with them for whatever reason. So their social world, it just gets so tiny. And so by coming into a community, how does that open up social opportunities for not only residents, but for their caregivers, their family caregivers as well?
Well, for the residents, they're going to be seeing, of course, family members or other residents that they wouldn't have been around before. It's a much larger group. We try to put seniors at the same dining room table or in the same programming table with people with the same like interests. And then the family members, I know for our building, we're very fortunate, and many of them visit on a daily basis. Not that it's required, but they do. But they do that based on our guidance. We want to make sure the resident adjusts to the community and has the best enjoyment here that they can have. So they go with their family members. The family members and the residents will go to programming together, and by that way they meet other family members or they hear about our support groups, and they really do become a true family depending on one another.
Yeah, I think the camaraderie there is so important because you get a chance to be with other people that are experiencing the same thing you're going through, and you can, help each other and, cry on each other's shoulder when maybe another friend wouldn't understand exactly what you're going through and wouldn't really know how to comfort you or what to say or what to do. So it gives you that chance to, really bond with somebody. And I think that's real important. And through support groups is a way to do it, but also in the day-to-day interactions around the community, right? I'm sure you see that.
Definitely. We see families that maybe make friendships, that they go out for meals together once a week, aside from the building. I know of families that get together really very socially after they meet one another here at the community. And it's just like you said, they have a common bond, and that just brings them much closer, much quicker.
Right. So that socialization is so important because without it, what would happen if someone were home, with their caregiver, their loved one, whether it's a spouse or an adult child or even with a paid caregiver at home because the family thinks that's the best thing for them. What would happen to their socialization without, experiencing all this? What would the lack of socialization do to somebody? I mean, obviously they're isolated.
Oftentimes, it really helps them they don't talk as much even. They're not just isolated. It's not that simple that they're isolated in front of a television. They're actually so isolated that someone will tell me, oh, my mother sleeps all day long, and that kind of thing. She sleeps all day. She doesn't talk much. She doesn't eat well. And by them giving us a chance to work with somebody here in this community, it's a complete different person. And oftentimes families are shocked, really, with the difference. But that's our training. And that's what we do. We have a routine that we set in place for them. We have certain things that we do to help them every day from every department, and that helps a person flourish. But at home, that wouldn't happen. At home, no matter how someone loves someone, I may be 20 years old and a nurse, but I can't care for somebody 24 hours a day without taking some kind of break. And our staff get breaks, of course.
Right, because we have... We all know that you have to sleep, and even caregivers who try to sleep usually sleep with one eye open or one ear open, listening for their loved one getting up in the middle of the night. And so it's very stressful for them, and it's just makes for a bad situation over the long period of time. So, Marianne, you talked about stimulation for the caregivers and the fact that it's social, but let's talk a few minutes about stimulation, both physical and mental. How is that incorporated better in a memory care community like Arden Courts rather than staying at home?
Well, there's challenges actually. As far as physical goes, not only do we have the walking area that they might walk safely with their loved one outdoors, sit in the gazebo, that kind of thing. Every day at our community, the day starts off with programming and with a simple exercise group with some stretching and some music, but it just gets everybody excited, including the family members. The family members, I see them laugh, and I sometimes do wonder who's having more fun, the residents themselves or the family members.
Yeah, that stimulation is important because I know a lot of families that have their loved one at home, the only time they get to do any walking is, from point A to point B in the house because they're afraid to let their loved one go outside for fear that they might wander off or that they might take off from the caregiver. So what does a community like Arden Courts provide to keep that from happening as far as being outside?
Well, we want to keep them as involved as possible, and we encourage them to get involved not only here in community activities, but they also, having less stress by having the person at home, they might get back to the things they used to do, such as golf and that kind of thing. Now, here in our environment, we simply have perhaps a putting green, and we might just encourage someone to, spend time with the grandchildren, spend time with the residents. There's just different things just like you have at home that they can get involved with, but they haven't been taking the time before because they were so busy being a caregiver.
Right.
So now they can get back to those interests. We may have adult coloring books, and I'll see, again, the family member sitting next to the resident, enjoying doing that together. Or, like you mentioned, the exercise things, going to the exercise class, walking with them outside. Even if it's just, throwing the ball and doing things, they're doing a lot more than they would at home. Because at home they were rushing to make the meals and keep the person safe, but not really doing much more than that. They were beginning to sit in front of the television themselves a lot, I think.
Right. And one of the things that you mentioned just now is safety. And so how does Arden Courts provide safety outside for residents who might want to go outside by themselves even?
We actually have something called two things. We have an hourly check in our community, which we do 24 hours a day. Our residents aren't able to pull cords to ask for care. So 24 hours a day, we lay eyes on them, see where they are, making sure they're safe. Then actually the outside of our property, which is pretty large actually, we have a staff member that walks that area every 15 minutes. So anytime the doors are open, someone is always walking outside every 15 minutes to make sure someone, has not had a fall, or if they're in a predicament that they need assistance, we're there to help them.
Right. And that outside area, of course, is all like fenced and secure, right?
Oh, it's fenced and secured. The paths are simple. They're circular paths. I don't know. I'm sure you've talked on your show about the 36-hour day and some of the tips that are in that book. I often tell families, or I ask families, have you read that? And they, of course, have. And I say, well, think of what you read about, because that's what you're going to see here. Because that is truthfully what we did. The company put 5 years of research into the product so that we try to do everything that's best for the person. The hallways are short, but the outside area is, like we're talking about the outside area, it is safe. It is safe, and they can always find a doorway to come in. So if they walk into a little bit of a circle, they run into a friend, they come to a doorway, they might see a flower bed that they're going to, work on with the flowers. But it's something to engage them and just keep them moving and keep them healthy.
Absolutely. No dead ends. I mean, I think that's the most impressive part. There's no dead ends, and they just keep going from a door to a pathway and back through a door and to their heart's desire. And, they can keep walking, where at home it's very unsafe to do that, down a street in your neighborhood and crossing roads and things like that. So definitely. Well, there is a lot of benefits to someone to place in a memory care community sooner than later, as Marianne just described, rather than staying at home. Lots of reasons not to stay at home, and especially when you want to get that safety, you want that stimulation, both physical, the mental, and the social activity that surrounds the residents in a memory care community. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to hear more from Marianne about some of the other things that you need to know as a caregiver. So we'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Hi, I'm Michael Mole, owner of Senior Helpers.
The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's. particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. Are common. We can help. Arden Courts. On persons living with Alzheimer's.
On caregiversolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
My guest today is Marianne Fisher. She's the Director of Marketing at Arden Courts of Palm Harbor in Florida, one of 10 Arden Courts located in the state of Florida. Marianne, thank you again for being with us today. And, Arden Courts has close to 50 communities throughout the United States. And I know that if someone were to consider having their loved one go into a memory care community, I'm sure that they would know about Arden Courts and be very happy to choose Arden Courts. Unfortunately, even though we have communities located across the United States, there's going to be caregivers who are not going to be close, who are going to live several hours away from their closest Arden Courts. And so we want to help those people too, to help them figure out how to choose a memory care community if you don't have an Arden Courts in your area. So, Marianne, how would you advise someone to start looking for a memory care community to pick one that's going to be good for them if they don't have an Arden Courts close by?
I would simply tell them the first step is always to come unannounced. You don't want to see a stage show. You want to see what's really going on a day-to-day basis. And when you're looking around, of course, cleanliness is important and how pretty the building is, but what you're really looking at is the eyes of the staff and the residents. Are the residents groomed, and are they happy? And are the staff happy in their daily work? You can feel that. You can feel that when you see somebody. And if somebody's grumpy at their work, then that might not be a good place. Of course, you look at staffing ratios. There's a lot of other things that you look at. ACA does a survey actually from the state, which is important. It's located in the lobby of every building. They have to have posted their rating with the state, and that's something the family can ask for. Simply just say, I would like to know your rating. Can you show it to me? Okay.
So you're referring to the Agency for Healthcare Administration, short ACA, right?
Correct.
And so what does that survey comprise of? I mean, how do they get it? Do all assisted livings have to be surveyed by the state? And if so, what are some of the things that they look at that would comprise part of that survey?
Yes, all assisted livings have to go through their ACA survey, and when they come in, they cover every aspect from the food and making sure the temperature is good, it's nutritional meals, it's served timely in a clean environment, clean kitchen, to the nursing staff making sure that they're administering the medications correctly and following the doctor's orders and caring for someone physically the way they should be. So basically, they really do check absolutely everything they can from the safety of the building, not even just the resident, but the safety of the building for fire alarms and exit doors that stay secure, unless there's a fire. It covers every aspect you could possibly think of. It really does.
So they check everything to make sure that the place that you're at, if you want to look at the survey to see how this particular assisted living rates. And don't they even go into the background checks of employees and other people that work there?
Well, they do. They double check to make sure that we've hired the people the way that we should do, and that's fortunate. I know for Arden Courts we do have a second level background check. Sometimes it's more than other communities, but they do check to see that the people there are allowed to take care of seniors with dementia or seniors at all, really. They want to make sure that that's, of course, allowed and safe. Yeah, they do background checks, make sure somebody's not a felon, make sure that
They get their fingerprints, make sure that they're not, on the blacklist, for being a caregiver. Things are really important because a lot of caregivers, unfortunately, they sometimes hire people into their home that don't come from an agency or a registry, and they just hear about somebody that somebody else used. And what's the risk of that? Because that sounds like it could be pretty scary.
Well, it's very scary because that person isn't checked out, and you don't know. You're letting them into your home. You're letting them into first their home, your home, and your checkbook and your things. But the most important thing is you're letting them care for your loved one when you're not around. And when it's somebody with dementia, they're defenseless. They are completely defenseless. Just like you drop off, and I forgive me for saying this. I don't want to compare it to a child, but it is similar to that. When you drop a child off at daycare, you don't know what's going to happen. You're trusting that person is going to do everything right that entire day. It takes a lot of trust. So it's the same thing. Our residents can't speak up for themselves. They can't oftentimes say if something was done right. So we want to make sure that they're getting the best care, that they're in the best place possible.
Yeah, you hear horror stories about, a private duty going into a home and gaining the trust not only of the person they're caring for, but also of the family. And lo and behold, unbeknownst to anybody until it's too late, that particular caregiver really ripped them off, stole money, maybe even assaulted the person they were caring for. And you hear these stories all the time. So one of the things that I like to bring out is that when a loved one goes into a community, into an assisted living community like Arden Courts, that's safe and secure, there's a lot of eyes on that person. So there's not just one person in the home caring, especially if family caregivers aren't in the same town and they have to rely upon someone from the outside caring for that person. Think about that, and think about what Marianne just said, that they're there alone. You have one pair of eyes on that person and nobody to oversee. But in a community, there are lots of eyes. You have the caregivers, you have the nurses, you have the staff, other staff, you have the administration. There's a lot of eyes on them. I think that's real important too for families to realize, because sometimes they might not even think about that.
Right. I think they're too trusting sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. So the survey tells a lot. This ACA survey tells a lot. So again, it's something that caregivers should check out. A lot of caregivers say, well, I took the smell test. And when they go in, if they smell urine or other unpleasant smells, they know right away that that's not a place that they want to be. So, everyone has their way of detecting what they like, what they don't like. But it's more of, like you said, looking at relationships and looking at the staff. I mean, isn't it important, Marianne, to ask about how long staff has worked there, and why is that important to ask?
It's very important because, unfortunately, Marcia, there's a true huge amount of turnover in this industry. A couple of things that I try to do just to make the families feel better when we're touring the community. We often do, introduce them to a staff member, and I just let the staff member talk. I ask them to introduce themselves, and I did that just this morning. And a young lady told the family that she had been with us 8 years, and you could just see the tension in their shoulders just kind of relax a little bit more, a little more trusting.
Because she felt that she feel that because the person that was there 8 years working in the community probably had a lot of experience, and obviously being there that long, she probably really liked her job, so which makes even a bigger difference.
Correct. Another thing that we might do during a tour is we'll introduce to family members, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of family that are very involved in our community. We're very fortunate. And I'll just simply ask a family member, do you mind saying hello to someone? And I walk away and let them talk freely. I know when it was my own mom having to go in assisted living, and this sounds funny, but a lot of people do it, and it's good. You talk to somebody in the parking lot, coming or going from work or from the community, and you just simply say, hi, can you tell me your experience? And that's important because you're going to hear it first on, and it's gonna make you feel so much better, or possibly, we shouldn't go to a community. Then you should take that off your list and maybe not even walk in.
Right, right. So longevity is important because obviously, what about a brand new community that maybe just opened up down the street from where somebody lives? They just opened their doors. They have, no residents yet, and, they're doing a lot of marketing and advertising to get residents. Why would that be maybe something that a caregiver might take note of if it's a brand new community rather than one that's been around for a long, long time?
If you don't mind, Martha, I'm going to use a personal experience again because I think it's the best way to explain it. Again, when my own mom had to go in assisted living, regular assisted living, there were two communities that I was choosing at the very end, and one was a brand new community that one of my very good personal friends was the administrator of. And I always remember touring that community on a Saturday morning with my husband for approximately 45 minutes and no one asking me who I was. Safety alone, that scared me completely. Seeing when no one's watching you how the staff are dressed and how they're speaking to the residents, that kind of thing. It's really hard, of course, to get great staff, and that's something we're so fortunate about here with our longevity in our building and our staff that have been here 19 years or 20 years with the company. You know what you get, and you're not the trial, I'll say. A lot of memories in this area I've toured them when they're new, and they're beautiful, and they're made for the family members, very gorgeous buildings. But if you go back there 3 months later, you'll see now there's a desk there, now there's a new door, now something the elevator's been changed because it was letting people outside. They don't do the things for safety, and safety to me is the most absolute important thing.
Yeah. You just said something that's also important when you said that the new buildings, and there's so many of them cropping up all over the country, because dementia, it's a tsunami, and there's going to be a lot more care needed as we go along. But the buildings are mostly made and decorated for the family members. What do you mean by that? I thought they were supposed to be for the residents that live there.
Well, they should be for the residents, and they should be the environment that the resident is comfortable and safe in. But that we are decorating for, it seems like not us, but the other communities, they're making the hallways too long. Now, some family member thinks, oh, that's wonderful. It's the Hyatt. It's a grand hotel. Look at this beautiful hallway with the chandelier at the end. Where truthfully, the residents don't. It's in research. Research will show you they won't walk to the end of a long hallway. Our hallways are shorter. Our hallways are wider. We have colors around the door, and we have symbols around the building to help them find their way around. It's not about glamour. Glamour's not going to keep them safe and help them to do well. It's about the care that they're getting in an environment that's not overwhelming. That's not too overwhelming because we don't want them to feel like failures trying to be lost in a building and I can't find my way down the hall because it's so large, that kind of thing.
Right. So you want to be a comfortable home-like environment, not something that looks like a hotel, because obviously people don't live in a hotel with marble floors and chandeliers, and it might be something that's appealing to the adult children of what we would like, right now, but not that's necessarily the good thing for our parent who had a different lifestyle when they were younger, because with the dementia, people tend to live more in the past, and that would probably not feel like home to them. And that's really an important point to make. So we're going to take another quick commercial break, and stay tuned. We'll be right back with more from Marianne from Palm Harbor Art Courts. We'll be right back.
Do you need
The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. But it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts.
Hi, we're back, and I want to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community, for having the foresight to create a community for people with dementia over 22 years ago that actually meets their needs and meets more than what we would even think about. And Arden Courts is a wonderful resource for caregivers, not only for help with your loved one, but also for information and for advice. And one of the things that Arden Courts does, besides having free seminars and free support groups, is they're offering this book to you. This is called the 36-Hour Day Book. It's a wonderful resource for caregivers. Marianne, our guest, mentioned it a few minutes ago about what a wonderful book it is, and I totally agree. And if you don't have this book and haven't read it, I would definitely recommend you getting it. And it's absolutely free, just for the asking. All you have to do is call the Arden Courts toll-free number and give them your name and address and phone number, and they'll be happy to mail a copy to you. So just pick up a pen and write this number down, 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410, and let them know that you heard about this free book on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and they'll be sure to get a copy right to you. So I'm back with Marianne Fisher. She is with us from Palm Harbor Arden Courts, which is on the west coast of Florida, and she's joining via telephone, and our picture is up on the screen if you're viewing us on your smart device, your phone or your computer. And we've been talking about a lot of things that caregivers need to know about what's the difference between, an assisted living and a nursing home, and who can do what, and when is it appropriate, and how do I choose? How do I even know what to ask for, because it can be very overwhelming. And also we're talking about what to expect when you actually make that decision. And I think, Marianne, this is one of the most difficult things. Let's take the scenario, which is very common, of caregivers who sometimes they're forced to make that decision because of their health reasons or other things that necessitate, maybe it's a crisis has happened in their lives and they need to place. Hopefully they haven't waited for a crisis and it's not going to be in a crisis mode, and they can plan. But even if it's a planned move, do you find that caregivers sometimes are very wary and afraid of taking that next step to actually bring their loved ones into the community?
Yes, Marcia, they are truly, truly frightened. I think that's one of the hardest things for them, other than knowing it's time to go in a community, but they always want to know, how are we going to do this? And I quite simply say, first of all, they're not alone, because it does need to be done a right way to help the resident, and we're going to help them through it. We do, of course, do an assessment when we meet somebody, and when we meet them in their home or their independent community, we would assess them, and that's going to help us know the person, not only where they are in the disease, but it's going to let us know, honestly, their heart. And we usually speak with the family, and we come up with a reasonable reason. My administrator likes to call it the story of why they're coming to be with us, because you don't just take someone out of their environment and bring them here. And seniors, even with dementia, they are very alert, and they have a lot of good ideas still. So we tell them something useful. We've told someone that they were coming here for memory testing. We've had them come out of rehab and saying you're going to finish your rehab for your bad leg. I had an amazing gentleman. I'll always remember his story. He traveled actually his whole life in the military, and when I met with his family and him, we came up with the idea, along with his daughter, I'll always remember, of writing a little bit of a letter, having a symbol on top that looked, very, very authentic. And he honestly, he got his papers at the breakfast table at home that day that said he was going to a new station. And he packed his bag. His wife brought him to my community. I was the memory care director. That was before we got the large Arden courts. We used to have a smaller unit back in the day. And he came right to my door, and he just absolutely saluted me, and he was there, and he was happy. And I walked him back, and he didn't look back. Now, and it's not always that easy, but that's the story. That's what I'm getting at. We need to have a story. It needs to be simple, and we need to help them every step of the way. And there's more steps than that even.
So you appealed to this gentleman's military expertise because obviously with his dementia that was very important to him, and he felt that he was going to go and be in a place that he was familiar with just because of what the story was. So how did that help him transition rather than just the family dropping somebody off and saying, okay, here you go? How does this story help someone transition into a communute?
Well, for this gentleman, he had a purpose. He always understood that my office was, the person in charge over him. I gave him a clipboard, and we would maybe walk together, and honestly, he would write things that might not make sense, or it's not about that. And in his mind, he had a job, and he was looking at everybody else and making sure things were done right. So it really gave him a big, sense of self-worth. He just felt good about himself because he was doing what he had done his whole life. He had always traveled, and he had always had staff underneath him. He had always had someone underneath him that he had to give direction to.
So how did this make the family feel?
Thrilled. Absolutely thrilled, absolutely relieved. Another thing that we do here at Arden is we try to call it the tuck-in call, and we often call a family member, often on the first night or 2 nights that they're here in the community, and I can't tell you the relief that makes someone feel when they hear our voice saying, it's okay, they ate a good meal, or maybe they had a small meal, but they're safe and they're in their bed for the night. Just the relief. You can just hear it on the phone when you talk to someone.
So you don't leave the family hanging. So once they bring their loved one, they're kept in the loop about how their loved one's doing, right?
Exactly. It's interesting. A lot of people come to us and they'll say, now we don't visit for 2 weeks, right? And my administrator and I will look at each other and we'll say, no, that's not how we do things at Arden Courts. You're the most important thing. You're part of the family, and hopefully you're going to help us. We're going to work as a team to help someone adjust. Now, every person's different with the disease, so there are times that someone might need to take a few days off for whatever reason. But typically, we want the loved one to join us by helping the resident go to programming, meet seniors at the same level that they're at, and really just being engaged in the facility. We want them to help with helping our staff, just for everybody to feel like they have a place that they belong, not thinking about the home anymore.
Right. And, being with Arden Courts for 17 years myself, I have a lot of those stories that I can remember. It's funny, we remember certain ones, and it's amazing sometimes the fear that the families have about moving their loved one in, and then the result is shocking to them because they really thought that it wouldn't be that easy, and it can be. It doesn't have to be hard. And I remember a lot of stories, whether it's you have to move in here, because your condo has termites, or you're, like you said, you're going to get some memory screening, especially for people that are higher functioning and they know that, they're having problems with their memory, or, this is just a benefit for you through your work that you retired, and it's a benefit that you get to take a vacation. I mean, there are a lot of things that we can use to help that resident. And it really does make a difference, and it does give comfort, I think, to both the resident coming in and the family, because everybody's on the same story, right? Are they going to get mixed messages when they come into Arden Courts about why they're there?
Well, that's why we need the story. We need to make sure that every staff member on each shift and the family member that visits in the morning and the family member that visits in the late afternoon, we all have the same story and we're all on the same page. That's extremely important.
Yeah, very, very important. Now, not that a story would work necessarily for everybody, or sometimes
No.
it depends on the person's level, where they're at in the disease process. Sometimes it depends on their personality. Sometimes it depends on the relationship they have with their family caregiver. And sometimes it is necessary to tell the truth. And I don't want to, give the impression that we never tell the truth, because certainly there are times when you just have to lay it all out there. But most times people with dementia have a hard time reasoning and accepting certain things, and they may not go for a story. They may be sharp enough in the moment to realize that, it's not what you say. So there are times when you just have to, put it out there and have the family caregiver explain, I can't do it anymore. You have to come here. It's gonna, and that happened. It happened, and I witnessed it, and it truly was really the only way that this gentleman was going to accept it, because he wanted to do what his wife needed, and he wanted to please her so much that he was willing to say, okay, for you, I will stay here because I want you to get rest and I want you to get better. So sometimes we have to do that, don't we?
We do that, and that's why we need to get to know the person, and we need to spend some quality time with the family, because we have to have something that's realistic and that's going to work best for each individual. Everybody's a little bit different, so oftentimes the way that we approach it is different.
Yes, that's true. So, Marianne, when someone moves into the memory care community, a question that always comes up is, how long is it going to take before they feel at home? What would you say to a caregiver who asked that question?
Absolutely, everybody is different, truthfully. And I've had someone where I'm thinking of a particular lady. I reached out and she took my hand and we walked back into programming, and she sat down and never looked back. Her husband would visit on a regular basis, but she was one of the easy people that just blended right in. She was looking for socialization. But then there are those people that takes, maybe a couple of weeks. Everyone's different. But the thing that I want the family to know is we have to work on it as a team to make it successful, because there's some things that can be done that are going to hurt the success. And I want them to kind of know what not to do on our recommendation, and then what to do to help us as a team help someone adjust. It's different for every person.
Right, and it is. And I agree. I've had some residents that come in the first day and they just had such a great time, and they went with the flow, and they were so happy to be there, and the families were thrilled because they had a different idea of how their loved one might react. And so that was like so wonderful. And then other people take a few weeks and even a month. And I know some men are kind of macho, and they kind of buck at it, but eventually, with the expertise and the kindness and the compassion that they're given, they eventually settle in and become great residents. And, it's like you say, everybody's different. So, how you approach it and what you say and what you don't say is very, very important. And I totally agree with you. So we're going to take our last break. When we come back, we'll have some more words of wisdom from Marianne. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The inability to recognize the obvious often occurs with Alzheimer's, particularly among the family members who care for them. When the time comes for you to decide that someone you love needs more help than you can give, will you be able to recognize it? Don't wait for a crisis to make the decision for you. Talk to us. We know. We understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Wandering is a common problem for people with Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's also a problem for family members who care for them. Keeping them safe and secure means never letting your guard down. And even though deep down you know it's time, it hurts to have to ask for help. but it could hurt them even more if you didn't. We know, we understand. We can help. Arden Courts. Somewhere at the corner of bewildered and confused is a lost mother, a father, a sibling, a grandparent. Wandering is a common symptom of Alzheimer's or related dementias and can often make those who care for a loved one feel just as lost. If you're looking for a place that's safe and secure, look to Arden Courts. Memory care is all we do. We know, we understand, we can help. To learn more, visit arden-courts.com. Arden Courts follows equal housing opportunity guidelines. Alzheimer's or related dementias. It's common among those who care for them, too. It takes a lot of patience and courage. It also takes knowing when you can no longer do it alone.
CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. My guest today is Marianne Fisher, Director of Marketing at the Palm Harbor Arden Courts. And Marianne, thanks again for being here and sharing all your expertise. I have a question for you. We're talking about moving someone into a community and how to make that successful. I had a situation more than once, actually, where after a few weeks, maybe a month, that the resident moved in, the family saw such an improvement in that person. I mean, the way they talked, the way they walked, they thought that we had cured their Alzheimer's and they were going to take them back home because they were all better. Has that ever happened to you?
That's when we just try to gently explain to a family member, yes, they have shown some improvement, not being cured, but some improvement because of what we do, because of the daily routine, because of the staff, so many staff helping. But it really is the routine to me. The routine and the programming is so much that just helps somebody flourish. Really, it helps them. They go to the dining room and they can find their way because of our symbols. I mean, everything about the building makes it safe for the residents to succeed, but you don't have those things at home. So that's how we have to, gently explain to a family member. Of course, they can. That's their choice if they would want to try and bring someone home. Sometimes I'll tell someone to bring them home for a weekend. I'll say, well, why don't you try it a weekend if you're really thinking about it? And quite honestly, the person maybe makes it one night, and early Saturday morning they're coming right back. So that's a hard way to have to do it, but it works, and you can't blame them because they're seeing their loved one do so well.
Right, because I think when they go home and try it again, they forget how hard it was. They've had a few weeks or a month or so to get rested up, and they forget how hard that caregiving is day in and day out, 24/7. And you're right, the stimulation, the socialization, the additional exercise of walking and doing physical, fun activities, all actually adds to the overall support of the resident. And it does make them seem like they're so much better, and sometimes they are, but they still have the underlying disease and the diagnosis. And that would be, to me, one of the most important reasons to have someone move into Arden Courts sooner than later. Just like we talked about going, full circle back to our first question today was, what would you say to someone who said, I want to keep my loved one at home, and then just put them in a nursing home? And I think that we've just answered that because it come full circle. It works, right? It works.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have a couple minutes left. I want to let everybody know that Marianne is in Palm Harbor, Florida. And if you're in that area and you have questions or you would like to see that particular community in Palm Harbor, Marianne, give everyone your telephone number where they can contact you at the building.
My number is area code 727-771-1600.
Okay, and you can call Marianne, you can schedule a tour. If you're not in the Palm Harbor area and you're in another part of Florida or in another part of the country and you are interested in taking a tour, just call our toll-free number, 888-478-2410, and they'll help you locate the art and course that's closest to you, and then you can go ahead and call them and make a time and date that's convenient for you and go in and meet with the Marianne there. Marianne won't be there, but there'll be someone like Marianne who can answer your questions. So please do that. I really think it's important to start to prepare. Marianne, thank you again. Our time is up, but I really appreciate you joining me today.
I enjoyed it, Marcia. Have a great day.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining today, too. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, every Tuesday, 5 to 6 Eastern Standard Time at caregiversolutions.info and on South Florida Radio here on the east side of Florida. So until then, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teal. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff,